Assalamu alaikum, you're watching Views and News and I'm Faisal Rehman live from our Islamabad studios. Today we'll be talking about a couple of very important issues related to Afghanistan. As we all know that the situation that has developed there is something which we never expected, and we always hoped that there's going to be a lot of relief for the people of Afghanistan. But what is happening is that when you talk about their banking system, it's almost at the verge of collapse. When you talk about the supply of food, it's unbelievably short. You talk about the acute shortage of medicines, they're totally out of the market, hardly anything available. And on top, since there were a lot of donor agencies earlier working there, but currently what we have witnessed that they have all withdrawn, and they've withdrawn their staff, and on top of that, that assistance that was so important for the Afghan people, that isn't there anymore. And on top, interestingly, that $9.5 billion of Afghanistan, that has been frozen by the American authorities. So there is nothing out there. I'll just give you a little example that the overall amount of money that normally used to circulate in the Afghan system was around close to $4 billion US dollars. I'm talking about the Afghani. And now the interesting part is that out of those, just imagine almost 12% is actually in circulation. The rest, it's God knows whether under the mattresses or where. The interesting aspect is that this is what exactly is happening out there. Today we also learned that the Afghan government has increased the number by another 25 members as far as their cabinet is concerned. Will they be able to manage that? How things will work? Well, Pakistan has also given them a small token, I would say, in terms of humanitarian and aid and support, and that is around 5 billion rupees. But that is not going to be the ultimate solution. Things will get really worse, and at the end of the day, what is going to happen is that we will be seeing huge number of refugees on our border. This is something which we don't want, and we've always tried to avoid that. But before I introduce you to our panelists and we start talking about it, our production team has prepared a package. Let's watch it.
Since the United States chaotically took an exit from Afghanistan without rebuilding and reconciliation of the war-torn state, the citizens of Afghanistan are facing dire survival challenges from the traditional as well as non-traditional security threats. The looming humanitarian crisis, which is progressing exponentially towards Afghanistan, is also apprehending the United Nations, as recently the World Organization urged that there is an urgent need for propping up Afghanistan's banks, otherwise the financial system of Afghanistan will collapse within months and its social impact would be colossal. Moreover, United Nations Special Representative for Afghanistan, Deborah Lyons, also warned that the country is on the brink of the humanitarian catastrophe and nearly 60% of Afghanistan's population is expected to face an extreme level of hunger. However, Pakistan has remained at the forefront regarding averting the looming humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan and always remained vocal about it in the international arena. In this regard, Prime Minister Imran Khan on 22nd November 2021 approved Rs 5 billion worth of humanitarian aid for Afghanistan as well as allowed the transportation of Indian food assistance for the war-torn country through Pakistan. The decision was taken at the first meeting of the Apex Committee of the newly established Afghanistan Inter-Ministerial Coordination Cell, which was chaired by Imran Khan and attended by Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi, Advisor on Finance Shaukat Tareen, Chief of Army Staff General Qamar Javed Bajwa, National Security Advisor Dr. Moeed Yusuf, and other senior civil and military officers.
Now to talk about it, let me quickly introduce you to our panelists. We have with us, on my right is Brigadier Retired Saeed Nazir, Senior Analyst, sir. Thank you so much for your time. And we also have with us Dr. Farah. She is an expert on foreign affairs and Assistant Professor at NUST. Thank you so much, ma'am, for your time. And we also have with us on Skype, joining us from Sweden, Stockholm, is Mr. Husein Askary. He's an expert in international affairs from the Schiller Institute. Thank you so much, Askary, for your time, sir. Pleasure to have you on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, if you allow me, let me start off from Askary, and let's see what the Western world is actually thinking about the current crisis in Afghanistan. Husein, obviously things are not good, not according to the plans, and there are a lot of hindrances, a lot of problems that are there. But looking at what is happening in Afghanistan, sir, today we learned that another 25 members have been added in the cabinet. Then again, we talk about the overall situation, sir. Winter is there. It's going to get really worse. And their banking sector might collapse in another 3 to 4 months. And some analysts believe that it could happen much before that. Now, sir, according to your own personal observation, where do you see Afghanistan going now, sir?
Well, I think there's a number of issues involved here, but Afghanistan is, of course, on a very terrible path towards disaster. But that's not the making of Afghani people or Afghani political groups. First of all, the freezing of Afghani funds, which belong to the people of Afghanistan and the state of Afghanistan, not the Taliban, by the United States and European banks. That what created the most recent and current humanitarian crisis, because Afghanistan cannot buy food from international markets, it cannot import electricity, it cannot provide for salaries for its employees, it cannot get money into circulation so people can buy their food. If these funds are released by the United States and Europe, they will make it easier to relieve the population in Afghanistan. The other source of the problem is a long-term problem, which is the utter failure of the United States, NATO, and the EU to make sure that the Afghani people have a sustainable economic system. After 20 years and trillions of dollars, Afghanistan cannot produce its own food, it cannot produce its own electricity, there is shortage of water, there is shortage of healthcare, there is shortage of everything. Now, there's a cynical game being played by Western powers, which says if we, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. They say the Taliban government will collapse, Afghanistan will collapse after we have withdrawn. Now, by stopping all humanitarian aid, by freezing the money of the Afghan people, they want to ensure that the Taliban cannot govern in such a situation, and then they will come back and say, look, we told you the Taliban cannot govern. Now, this is a cynical game, and it should stop. And I think it's very important that Pakistan, China, and other Afghanistan's neighbors are stepping in. But my fear is that humanitarian aid alone will not help the situation. What is needed is a coordinated effort to stabilize the financial situation inside Afghanistan. Of course, without the reserves that are frozen in the West, it's very difficult for the Central Bank of Afghanistan and Afghani organs to import food and medicine and that. But there should be some sort of financial mechanism.
Their overall imports are around $7 billion. Askary Sahab, now let me ask you another question here. Do you believe that the Western powers, deliberately are trying to make sure that this current regime of the Taliban in Afghanistan should fail at the cost of a crisis perhaps inside Afghanistan and at the cost of the people of Afghanistan? They don't care about the people perhaps. And at the end of the day, just to make sure that the Taliban regime should suffer and they should be down on their knees, no matter what happens to the people.
Yeah, that's unfortunately the situation. There's a cynicism, which is, I think it's criminal in a sense, but they are not saying that openly, but you can watch what they are doing. What the United States, what the European governments and banks are doing, that's where you see that there is this cynical game to make sure, no matter what the cost, that the Taliban government collapses, you will have resurgence of terrorism in the country, and that the neighbors of Afghanistan will be affected. I have talked to military intelligence experts in Europe, and they, with a smile on their face, said, look, this Taliban thing is going to collapse. That was more than a month ago, and nobody can control the country. So they although they are not saying it openly, their actions are pointing at that direction. And I think it's important that Pakistan and other countries are stepping in, while at the same time our calls here at the Schiller Institute in Europe and in the United States, we have a massive lobbying effort to make sure that the funds are released. And there are very clear ways to control the money so it doesn't fall in the hands which they don't desire. For example, for the Taliban, there are mechanisms to ensure that the Afghani money, when it's released, is used to buy food and medicine and clothing for the people. And at the same time, we have an international campaign which the chairman of the Schiller Institute have called Operation Ibn Sina, to ensure that the Afghani people, but also people in Yemen, which are suffering the same way, and in Syria, have a relatively good healthcare system. And therefore, this is an international matter. But whatever Pakistan, China, Iran, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization can do now is very, very crucial, because it's the race against time. The winter is coming. The World Food Program is saying that 22 million people are on the verge of starvation, and this can increase. And only humanitarian aid cannot sustain the situation, although it helps.
And you know, on top, the most interesting part is why to delay if you know that there is a problem which is brewing out there. You need to take care of it, like before it is, out of your reach, or perhaps it's out of, your control. But let me also engage you, pick this up now. We have all heard about the known Egyptian political party, the Muslim Brotherhood. And we all know what happened to Morsi when he was ousted. And then there was this fake trial, and eventually that man died. And General Sisi came into power. I still remember when Hamas won in Palestine. Eventually they were not accepted because, and now they have been declared as a terrorist organization by the British, interestingly. And now the Taliban in Afghanistan, sir, whether legitimate or not. So is it up to the people of Afghanistan to declare them legitimate or illegitimate, or the Western world, sir? They started off the negotiations with the Taliban. They initiated it. They concluded it. They devised the future plan. And at the end of the day, once they are there, the people are suffering. What is this going on?
Actually, this is nothing but blank double standards. And that's what is visible everywhere, especially in the Muslim world. Once it comes to the Muslim world, and once it comes to the Christian worlds or other worlds. So naturally, their double standard we are facing, or we are witnessing since long. The things are, there are so many contradictions even in the narratives which they are professing, or the way they are projecting it, for the reason that these were the same Taliban with whom you were fighting for 20 years. And then you were cajoling and you were asking Pakistan to facilitate to talk to them. And once you have concluded a deal with them, so naturally they were a party to the Afghan government, or their government was there.
And now the Secretary of State, Mr. Blinken, blames you
and the
Taliban. Interestingly, there was a recent statement.
And the collapse occurred due to their stooge, or their so-called nominee, Ashraf Ghani, fleeing away from the country and taking a tranche in cash of $500 million. And then, of course, others also left with so many cashes and so many things. So the thing is that there are three things. One thing is that if they are waiting that Afghanistan should become again destabilized, or the internal implosion take place. So what will happen? The same groups, the Daesh, the
neighboring countries would face it, and they perhaps really
this is
want
one
that.
of the reasons, Professor Saab, is there. And in the social sciences, once there is complete deprivation and the people are hungry, so what happens? Law and order,
according to the UN, 60% of the Afghan population is hungry.
Major factor is the hunger. Major factor is once the rate of the government is not there, and once the people are away from the government systems. One second thing is that Talibans are the same party with whom they have negotiated, and in that Doha deal that we will recognize you and you are the legitimate party to talk to the Afghan government. And once the Afghan government is left, so naturally they were the natural successors. So why they are not supporting it? And third thing is that $9.5 billion which has been frozen, it is the people of Afghan who are suffering.
It's the money of the state of Afghanistan.
It is the money of the people of Afghanistan, not of the Taliban, not of the Ashraf Ghani. Why they are not releasing that money? For that simple reason that they could forward or they could project that particular narrative which Askary was also pointing to, that well, the Taliban government has collapsed, and we were talking about this because they will not be able to run the government.
What about the influx of the refugees then?
And the third thing is, as far as the exodus of the brain drain which has taken place, it was all planned by the Americans and by their Western powers and the NATO, because otherwise they will not accept any Pakistani, any of the Afghan, any of Bangladesh, any of the Indian or any of the Central Asia unless with proper documents and proper visa system, proper regimes. That regime was not there. How they were accepted? Because they wanted that this brain drain should take place and there should be a collapse of the system.
So it should be some sort of government
thing is
that should listen
if
to
the humanitarian
the Americans.
crises
I
are
mean,
there,
if it's not there,
yeah, if the humanitarian crises are there, so what for the world body is there? What for this human rights
question, it
which
doesn't
they are
matter to them.
protecting? Is it not the human rights violation that the people are starved and there is a harsh winter coming and there is a famine? So who is responsible? Of course, the same people who are stopping the legitimate
because
aid to them.
maybe this part of the world, it
recognition
really
or
doesn't matter to
acceptability is
them.
another factor. But as far as the humanitarian crises are concerned, they are bound by the United Charter to support them.
The people are dying of hunger,
Right.
and the Americans throw away their wheat to balance the prices in the international
Oh,
market.
they were.
I mean, this is
That's
what it is
insane.
all about, sir.
Rather dropping food after the bombing. That what is the same thing that they have done in Afghanistan.
Well, now coming to you, Dr. Saeed, there are a couple of very important points. I've been very, very carefully listening to the Indian media. Whenever I get time, I watch their shows. And perhaps the hawkish anchors out there, they are only showing the negative stuff of the Taliban. If they end up getting hold of some old visual even, they would show it as if it is a recent one, and this is what the Taliban are doing, and see, this is what these people are. They're not humans, they are killers, and the negative propaganda starts. And then the support staff sitting right next, they start, they further add fuel to the fire. But interestingly, ma'am, one aspect that is also true, like when the Taliban understand that the entire world is looking at them and they're trying to pick the moment they do something wrong and they expose it like this, no matter 99% they do good stuff, but that's never been told to the world what is going on. The interesting part is, today I was reading a story in which they were saying that the Taliban have told the media people to make sure that no woman should appear in any drama. And then the entire social media was on fire. Now, don't you think this is, and they believe that, yes, okay, fine, the newscaster should be there, but she should wear a hijab. It's understandable because the culture supports it. But ma'am, don't you think for them also, I mean, yes, you have to show responsibility and you have to show some sort of, I would say some logic also, for your actions.
Yeah. First of all, it's on their agenda. That's what we call agenda setting. Malign Taliban, show them monsters, brutals, barbaric, and all
Yes.
of those. I don't stand for any sort of brutality, no matter if Taliban does or the United States does. I care about the people of Afghanistan who are suffering at this stage. I don't care what the Indian media is projecting and showcasing. They are all grouped together to show Taliban as the brutals. Since in power, as I said, I don't stand for the Taliban, but I stand for peace. If they can bring peace in Afghanistan, why not? And if they were able to negotiate with the United States, all the Western powers, suddenly how they become monsters one more time. This is what the world needs to realize. At the same time, according to the United Nations statistics and reports, 1 in 3 are hungry at this time. This is not the time to showcase who is barbaric and who is not. Let's feed the population. Let's care about Afghanistan and its people. Forget about your rivalry. Forget about your agenda. This is not the time to showcase who you are and what worth you
But
hold.
this is going to promote their agenda further, ma'am.
I understand, but the world needs to unite. This is just a small pocket in the world.
Ethics, values,
They're gone.
Yes,
They're gone.
that's what I'm saying.
They're gone beyond, and,
No
and
more
nobody
norms.
care. Nobody care. And as I completely endorse whatever Sir was mentioning a while ago, they have in their anger, in their frustration, in the way they have got defeated in Afghanistan, they're not coming out of it. Learn from your lesson. Move on and let the Afghan people live and breathe. If you let them starve in this situation, the regional countries will come over. And I repeatedly say and write in my pieces even that America is itself is ruining its position here. If just say they will come out of this situation, this $9 billion, it belongs to the people of Afghanistan. And it happens to be the Taliban are the leaders. They are labeled and tagged as Taliban, but they are now the leaders. We accept or we don't accept, right? So if that was the issue, they should have sorted out the issue 20 years when they were staying there. And if they were not very happy with them, they should have sorted it out by that time. Why now? Why now this timing, when people are starving, when there is no medical facilities available, when there is no food
To put
available?
pressure on the regime of Taliban.
Yes, 2 million
To
children.
make sure that they fail.
Well, 2 million children are still malnourished. Where are the proponents of human rights who claim to be that we want to stand for the women? Today I wrote a piece in the newspaper and it got published. I'm receiving calls from all the foreign colleagues of mine that why didn't you mention women? Women, of course I stand for all the women in Afghanistan. But when I write about women, I will write about women. When I have to write about some other issues in Afghanistan, I will write about those issues in Afghanistan. So we have to keep everything in its right box. By showcasing when they want to highlight their agenda, that this is what we want you to do, by dictating them what to do, what not to do from quite far, they will be using all the soft elements, children, women. But when it comes to they giving the funding to those children
Nobody
and
talks-
women, those children and women, no one is there. You can't find any of them. So what sort of ethics do they hold? What sort of norms
But this is
they are
what reality
following?
is now. What? How to move forward?
But if of course the regional powers, Pakistan being who is more than 122 billion under debt with all the liabilities, right? We still extended $5 billion to support and help them.
5 billion rupees.
Rupees.
Wish
Yeah,
we
sorry.
could do that much.
It's still like too much for a very struggling economy. I would say it's a way too much. Where are all those powerful countries who want to claim that they want to do something for the women in Afghanistan, where they are so concerned about their attire particularly? Go and feed them. They are dying. What will you do with those women if they are some completely dressed up in a Western attire or in hijab? If they don't have the food to go into their stomachs, feed them. Protect them, give them medicine that they need and require, give them clothes that they require in this harsh weather. All the facilities that is their due right to have and to avail. So by doing all of this, I think Taliban and as leaders, as I said, I don't stand for them. I just stand for the people of Afghanistan. So if they go through this situation, they will come out of it through the regional support and all of that. They will remember it forever. And do you think that all those young women, girls and children and men including, they're also human beings. We can't leave them behind. If they come out of that situation, will they forget it? Impossible. Impossible.
Well, that's something which might happen. You never know. That's where, because at the end of the day, it's like a time bomb and the clock is ticking.
We have seen in the history many states and its nations survive through difficult times.
And
they are going through a difficult situation, and we, all of us, not only the regional countries.
And these are not normal people. These are tough people.
They are tough people.
They have survived and they will. But they'll remember you're right.
They will come out of it somehow. The regional countries will never let them fail.
If you do bombing, just to make sure that people should stop thinking about terrorism. This is, you are feeding
they are terrorizing
it.
them.
Exactly,
You are terrorizing
that's what I'm
them.
saying. I mean,
this
policy is going to
So the thing
get
is,
really
their actions, whatever they're doing in Afghanistan, I think it speaks about what they are trying to achieve out of it. Instability is their ultimate goal.
Well, I'll come back to that, because that is something which we all know. But the real, debate would be about how to counter it and how to avoid it. Not because it is going to affect Afghanistan. Because at the end of the day, When Afghanistan is affected, it is going to affect my country. That is going to be a real problem. Now coming to you, Askary Saab. I am sure whatever is happening for a reason, for a purpose. And I would say that there is a design behind it also. They wanted that the Taliban should break. They will not. It's a very resilient, very tough, very different kind of a breed of people, sir. And we do understand that. Currently, sir, looking at the recent issues and the problems that are emerging, and they will continue to multiply in the future also, sir, what sort of a remedy you believe should be there in place? Because China normally doesn't support the way the Americans do. They, in fact, gave a little token of about 33 million, that is nothing. A long-term consistent support. I mean, when you talk about the kind of money the Chinese hold, I mean, 3.2 trillion is not a joke. That's in their central bank. You talk about around 600 billions, that is with the Russians. Well, Pakistan is a poor country, sir. Forget about Pakistan for the moment. Whatever Iran can do, because what I fear is that if they are not helped, and helped at the right time before their banking system collapses or something happens, that's also a break away. Do you think, sir, the fallout factor on Pakistan is something which we should avoid at all cost? That is something which we won't be able to handle in the current circumstances. Your take.
Yeah, definitely. We should not allow Afghanistan to collapse, because its ramifications will be disastrous for everybody. First of all, for the Afghani people, but also for the neighboring countries, and that's where the story of intention comes in. But I think there is a short-term solution and there's a long-term solution. I appreciate what your guest also said, Dr. Naz and Mr. Nazir, that international law is very clear on these matters, and the international war criminal law, because if you commit actions against the civilian population where you deprive them of food, water, medicine, or healthcare, whatever, these are war crimes, even if you are not involved in a war crime, in a war process. The way the propaganda works is that they don't show you the starving children and women and elderly people. They will show you the leaders of the country. I am from Iraq. We saw in the 90s, they were showing Saddam Hussein developing chemical weapons, while 500,000 Iraqi children were dying slowly as a result of internationally imposed economic sanctions. But they don't show these things. They show you that, okay, there's a terrible leader here, and that's the problem. It's not what we are doing.
Because you have to build up a narrative, and then you have to convince the public that whatever, I mean, yes. I still remember that evening, I mean, it was evening in Pakistan, when Colin Powell, the then Secretary of State, advocating for the war in Iraq, and he said, well, there are major, sites where we have found the weapons of mass destruction, and can you imagine these trucks and these missiles? I mean, they can be so lethal for the region, and for us also it's a threat. So let's invade Iraq. And then this concept of embedded journalism came out, sir, and that was totally nonsense, because whatever they were told by the military, that's what they advertised on CNN. See, that's how you build up narratives. And the entire public thought that Saddam Hussein was a bad guy, Americans did the right thing. And eventually Tony Blair had to apologize.
It's the same in Syria. But if going back to the solutions, because this is our real concern. In the Schiller Institute, we are in Europe, we are in the United States. What we will do, we will continue to mobilize the moral conscience of people. People now, we are seeing reactions actually from some American think tanks who are now also calling for releasing the funds. There are people in Congress, they are being, discussing these things. But we have to be solution-oriented. And therefore, we have to continue to mobilize to defreeze the funds, increase the humanitarian aid, but also make sure that that's the long-term solution, that Afghanistan's infrastructure, healthcare, food production, water, electricity, all these things are rebuilt. And there was a very clear consensus in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Even the Taliban called for China and other nations to help integrate Afghanistan in the Belt and Road Initiative, New Silk Road, connecting to Pakistan's China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, connecting to the Central Asia, Iran, New Silk Road, and so on and so forth. But also on the short term, I think the neighboring countries, to prevent a total disaster, they should step up their work together. And I think it is possible to establish a certain financial mechanism to provide credit to the Central Bank of Afghanistan, which is still functioning, but it's cut off the funds that the China, Russia especially, but also other nations in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization should step up and create a financial mechanism to support with credit, not donations, because you need to establish some sort of a normal financial banking mechanism so the government in Afghanistan and the people in Afghanistan can manage their trade with the outside world, because they are completely dependent.
Absolutely, these transactions should start taking place. That's very important.
Yes, and that's where the issue is. I mean, we had a failed system. I mean, what happened in Afghanistan recently shows very clearly.
And you know, the most worrisome part is that what if the system collapses or it fails? Then what? I mean, that is something which really worries me. But coming back to you, Brigadier Sahab, now a couple of points here. As far as the American agenda or the long-term planning is concerned, sir, ideal Afghanistan doesn't suit. We all know. I mean, an idiot would say that, you know, it's the other way around. They want problem to be there. They want to put a check on the Chinese. On the Western front, they would try to make sure that the problem should exist. Makes a lot of sense. On the Eastern Chinese side, we all know what's going on, started from Taiwan all the way down, and the presence of the Americans, issues with the Japanese and the Koreans, and you know. But sir, having said that, for a country like Pakistan, what if this happens without the will of the Americans, and there is a huge influx on our border points? And what would you do? Do you have a choice? Are you preparing? Are you geared up? What if hundreds of thousands of people just come? Because they're hungry, sir. There's no food there. There's no work there. What should they do? They're looking forward to you people to help. I mean, that kind of a scenario, is there any probability? If there is it high, low or medium, sir?
Actually, once we see the Afghan people and the geography and plus the connection, the people connectivity between the two countries, Afghanistan has always been dependent on Pakistan as far as the food and trade is concerned.
Trade, yeah.
Because it is a landlocked country. Second thing is that Pakistan by design or by default or by implication used to keep the reserves for the Afghan, because somehow or the other, if there is not a legal trade, there is an illegal trade going on there, and people are supported because there is a need. Third thing is that the Afghan people themselves, and especially the Taliban government, they are so resilient and so self-respecting that probably the world may do anything, but they will not beg, they will not bow, and they will not ask them that we are surrendering to this particular pressure and you can come to our rescue. Well, that will not happen. And third thing is that such sort of crisis, of course, it is worrisome for the neighbors and especially for Pakistan, because Pakistan is actually the strategic depth of Afghanistan. Because whenever there is a calamity, there is a war, there is a famine, there is any sort of crisis, always their refugees comes to Pakistan.
One of our generals thought otherwise.
That is a wrong perception, because if you know the proper definition.
No, it wasn't.
So that is another aspect. So we have always been looking after them, and the support was always provided. But now, where is the Muslim country, the OIC? Why not Pakistan is, once it is facilitating.
To OIC?
Well, there is an organization. So if it is live, it must be listening. And if it is live, it should respond. If it is live, it should support, and if it is live, the people are hungry there, and they have got so much money in their coffers.
It is such a useless body, unfortunately, sir, that I don't even know the name of the head there.
You may have, you may not know, but the thing is, we should talk about it.
All I know
that there is
some,
an organization, and if they are not suffering from the memory loss or from the deaf and dumb, so probably they will respond, and they should respond for the reason that only probably.
Sir, everything revolves around Saudi Arabia.
No, everything revolves about America. If they want,
basically, yeah,
they
that's
will
what
release it.
I
They
was
will
saying,
release
yeah.
it. If they don't want, they will not. Actually, the problem is there.
I fail to understand that Saudi Arabia and UAE, these were the two countries who were so eager to accept the Taliban regime, alhamdulillah, along with Pakistan, 3 countries in the world.
Yeah.
That's these 3 countries supported, and the Taliban, they took charge, and they continued for, well, around 5-6 years, till the time 9/11 happened.
So
and
where
whatever
was at
happened
that time
after that.
the European support or the American support? It was not there, and the regime
That's
was
what-
there.
Because
and
there was money
the people
pouring in
were
from
there.
UAE and Saudi Arabia.
That's what I say, that they need not to.
So now
because
now
$5 billion
the
is
adversaries
hardly,
of the Taliban,
hardly any,
the former president is hiding in UAE. Everybody thought that maybe he's in Oman. Somebody said, no, he's in Tashkent. Come
No,
on,
there
was a
also
welcoming
reports that the
family there as well.
the tranche he took along, it was also shared.
On the behest of the Indians, who must have asked the UAE government, perhaps the Indians,
But
you
let
know,
me say one thing.
to settle our boy
Even in
along with those
Pakistan,
$500 million.
If in the private sector or the philanthrop or otherwise we have got so many these organizations, if they are allowed, probably we can get them and shore them from this crisis, humanitarian crisis, and especially during this winter.
All right.
I suppose Pakistan people have got that much prowess, that much generosity that they can generate and help them. That is one. Second thing, why not China? Why not Russia? Why not Central Asia? And why not Iran? If the others are not thinking, so the blowback will be coming on the neighbors. So why not the neighbors should respond?
Because
and
they are
second
very
thing,
secure, their
if for
borders
the
are secure.
security reason,
They
there
won't
is the-
let in
there is
a
a
single
regional
person,
approach.
sir.
No, if for the security reason, there is a regional approach, why not for the economic or for this hunger, there is not a regional
that is a long-term
approach, or
solution,
the human rights or human starvation approach. Why not that should
All
be
right.
adopted?
Now, Dr. Sahib, there was another story also that said that it was from the Afghan Taliban that the Americans will be sending us food. What is that supposed to mean?
Is it some Manu Salwa landing
I
there
don't know.
from Washington
I
DC
mean,
in
I
Kabul?
fail to understand. There has to be, work done on war footing. This is just like a tsunami that has struck the shore, and now everybody's thinking, now what? Or an earthquake, perhaps.
Promises would have been made to all these innocent guys, and as mentioned earlier by Sir, that they are the people who will not beg because they hold some traditional cultural norms
They have
and values.
values,
They
yes.
are fighters.
Pashtuns.
They are Pashtuns. They are very concerned about their identity. Challenging them is, I think, not a good idea. The West is really playing dirty with them, and
The West is also supporting their adversaries, these non-state actors like Daesh.
Yeah. And the thing is that this label of Taliban, who gave them this label of Taliban? Who created this Taliban? When they gave them this label, they were quite happy with them because this label...
They were serving their purpose then.
Yes, this label gave them victory over Soviet Union. Now, when this label does not suit them, now they are again claiming them and calling them to extremists and terrorists. Now, when they happen to, with this label and without this label, they are the leaders of Afghanistan.
What really bothers me, ma'am? The champion of democracy and the champion of human rights, Mr. Joe Biden, the one and only. Why is he quiet? These Afghan children are not children of the universe.
The type of analysis he has been provided, the type of information he has been given, he think it's fancy to do it that way.
He's been in politics for the last 50 years, 50.
I completely
Is he a
agree.
baby?
I completely agree. He's a man of establishment. If he cannot protect, just take the other side of the story as well, because they are ruining American image in the world. they are Americans at this stage, whatever they are doing in Afghanistan, to the people of Afghanistan, to all those women who is always, you open all the social media platforms of the West, women, 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 women. We all stand, we all share their pain. It's not like only you.
I mean, the women in burqa bothers them,
Yeah.
but a hungry, dying woman
That's
won't.
okay, that's cool,
Yeah.
that's cool. And the thing is, women, 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 they are our sisters as well. To you, it could be some agenda, but for us, it's our blood because we share the same blood across the border. So we are more concerned, worried about their well-being and everything. At this stage, I think only caring about they being showing on the media as well or not, it's secondary.
Ma'am,
If
that
their
matters.
stomachs
That's
are-
how
yeah.
you build up narratives. That's how you gain support from the masses.
They're losing their support here. It's not only Afghanistan, it could be one of the testing grounds and testing waters for them to see, to bend them and to push them to a certain degree. But I think America is really losing its morale here. The way they are showcasing that you dying of hunger does not mean anything to me, but you wearing a hijab or not wearing a hijab means a lot to me. I think
That's about your freedom.
it's hypocrisy. It's hypocrisy.
110%
If they
yes.
are so concerned about freedom of speech and liberty, they should also be concerned about their stomachs as well. If their stomachs are hungry, if they're not getting the medicine at the right time, they will not survive. They can survive with hijab or without hijab.
And I tell you one thing, if the Americans do not help them at the right time, their generations will never forgive them.
Exactly.
Never forget
Exactly.
them. And honestly speaking, if the Americans really want that, this war on terror should come to an end through bombing, perhaps 5% can be managed. But the 95% hatred that you've created in the hearts of the children who are hungry and they know that the Americans ditched us,
But Faisal,
they'll
here-
never forgive you.
Yeah, Faisal, here I always feel pain of the American soldiers as well. They have been here, they have lost their lives as well. They have been away from their
2,500 youngsters.
they have been away from their families. For what? For all of this that they are doing now. This is the ultimate end of the game here of 20 years of long war. And if you hear the stories of all those soldiers and all the generals who are coming up now and telling
Ma'am,
secrets,
you won't believe
sharing secrets,
regarding the suicide rate out there, all those who have served.
they are learning
One
now.
a day.
And one story,
One a day.
and one story was coming out where one of the generals, he mentioned that the game was that the plan was that you have to win over 5 countries in 5 years.
I've heard that.
What sort of gaming is that? Are you playing with
Global
life?
edge,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely.
You are.
Guinea pigs.
You pay. You
There you go.
play. You play.
Might is right.
Yes,
At the end
you
of the
play
day.
with you play with life of each one of the people across the world, and at the same time you stand there with a dignity and I don't know what sort of courage they are holding.
This
there,
is the year 2021.
which is almost
the
ending
second
with a
last month.
disaster.
And
ending
after-
with the American empire as well. Because the empires are not conquered, they commit suicide. And
They
therefore
fall
is
on
the
their
moral
own.
suicide.
And they are
That is the
yeah,
moral
and
suicide.
they
I would
are,
like
what
to
they're doing
comment on
here,
that
they are
because-
affecting the life of Afghanistan, regional countries, Americans as well. What's wrong with you? Grow up. Come out of your power dynamics. What sort of hegemony you want? You are capable,
Everybody
sufficient
wants to,
enough.
whosoever wins the gold.
At
ends
the
up-
cost of, at the moment,
know,
the 38 to 39 million people of Afghanistan are
It
paying
really
the
doesn't
price.
matter to them, honestly speaking. Anyway, Dr. Saab, I was just told that we are totally out
Yeah,
of
but
time.
one point for Askary as well.
Sir, quick
That-
15
the
seconds.
Quick one. Because
No,
they
no,
were for the
because
weapons
based
of
on the
mass
question
destruction.
of
And they pumped it more than 300,000 rockets and shells in
They
the
needed some place, certain
To test their
natural
weapons.
built
in
targets.
Test their
soil and
weapons.
water.
Exactly, to
Soil
test their
and water,
weapons.
yes, soil
and to
water.
minimize the cost.
Yeah.
And
And in the
interestingly,
cancer rate-
whatever they spent there
They
was
cash
paid
it
by
back.
the
Cancer rate-
Saudi
cash it
government.
back.
50%.
Was paid by
Yes.
Saudi Arabia. But no, we will not get there now. Anyway, Ril Saab, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr.
Thank
Saira.
you very much.
And Askary Saab, yeah, if you want to comment, Askary Saab, quick one.
No, I say that on the question of empire, what is important to know is that we got bad news and good news. The bad news is that the world is in a dangerous situation because of the escalation by the United States, NATO, and other Western powers against China and the South China Sea, and the so-called Indo-Pacific, and against Russia in Ukraine and in the Black Sea. That's a very, very dangerous situation. The good news is that the world has changed. This is not 1991, this is not 2001. The world has changed. The world global economic power has moved to the east.
And the best part is that the Chinese, they have started talking about it, and they have started showing them their stance through kinetic means. This is exactly what Russians did in Crimea and later in Ukraine. Anyway, Askary Saab, thank you so much for your time, sir. Pleasure was all mine to have you in the show, sir. Thank you so much once again. Thank you very much, Brig Saab and Dr. Sahiba. And that's all we have for this Saab. I'll see you tomorrow at 8:05. Till then, you take good care. Khuda Hafiz.